Hey guys, it's Folkroot, and welcome back to my channel. I know it's been a while, but I'm gonna jump into a video starting with Tradtober. So this is a tag from my good friend Jasmine Ambrosia, and I hope that you guys enjoy. And also don't mind the awkward angle that I'm sitting at because I'm trying to block out this light right back here. So yeah, let's get into it. So I have some like little notes down here that I'm going to be reading off of and just kind of putting my 2 cents in on these prompts. So let's get into it. So the first thing is, what does kind of this season of the witch mean to you? And so with that, to me, the season of the witch is kind of, stepping into your power as a witch, stepping into who you are, owning your power. If you don't, feel it in your bones yet, in your blood, kind of like, kind of reaching out to your ancestors and kind of figuring out who you are and who you want to be as a witch, and kind of discovering yourself. And sorry, my cat's playing with my book down here. And kind of just exploring yourself, and your power, and what does being a witch mean to you, and what do you think comes with that, and what can you do with this power that's kind of inside you. So I know also in terms of traditional witchcraft, we have this concept of the red soul. But to me, the red soul, I like to think of it as something called the worm blood. So think of it as like the dragon blood. I know that sounds weird. And I like to think of it as a coiling root. When we die, when we go into the afterworld, like the underworld, or we get buried into the dirt, the things connecting us, the things that connect the trees together, these root systems. So I think of it as like a coiling root system, kind of interlocking us together until the end of time, so that we're all connected. And so I kind of think of that as like an ancestral tree that everyone's kind of connected to in a way, which I think is really cool. One thing I like to think of is our blood. If we spill our blood now, that is essentially spilling the blood of all those before us. So any kind of terms and agreements that your ancestors may have made could potentially, could have been in a way passed down to you through, blood and kinship and whatnot. And with that, the idea of worm blood or the red soul is directly related to that. It's related to kinship, to bone, to blood, to the ties of this earth, what anchor us through our people and our ancestry. And just kind of like, what is in your blood? What are those people who came before you, if that makes sense to you. So I think I'll go now into sharing my thoughts on the afterlife. Honestly, it isn't something that I've given much thought. And like, now that I sit here and think about it openly on video, I like to think that the soul is, there's different, we have these 3 different souls in our body, and one of them stays here on earth, and it can be used by current witches to kind of reach back out if they need something. And then one soul is kind of sent to the upper realms, and one soul is sent to the underworld. So we're kind of part of this interconnectedness of as above, so below. And sorry, there's just cats everywhere here. So with that, I do think that part of the soul is recycled, and it can come, it does come back through again. And like, will I ever feel the way I do now in another body? Like, I don't know. I would like to think so. Even if I might not know it, I would like to think that I kind of feel this sentience, this like sentient being type vibe, that we all feel, that, we know we're living in another body. But even if I don't, I've had my time and I've come to peace with that. And I know that the witches that come after me, and if there are any in my family, they can always reach out to me and I will respond. And that's just kind of how it is with me. The next thoughts are kind of like, what are your thoughts on necromancy and mediumship? So to me, necromancy and mediumship is definitely something in my practice that I feel like everyone should be practicing. And maybe that's a hot take and maybe it isn't. If not, I mean, okay, but you know, if you're going to be in a group with me, I think you definitely have to practice it. And I think also one of my hot takes is that you need to learn the basics, but after the basics, you're kind of on your own. Like, you're going to have to learn through experience and working with the dead and conjuring these spirits, you know, banishment, cleansing, all that. Like, a lot of that is basic work, but in turn, like, not all these spirits are going to offer you their help, and not all these spirits are going to be your friend. So knowing your ins and outs is definitely going to help you in the long run. But at the same time, like, you can't learn everything and you just kind of have to do it. So if necromancy and mediumship scare you, I would recommend learn the basics, what you can, and then just try your best and experiment with different methods. Try to reach out to these different spirits if you can. And yeah, my cat's going crazy. Reach out to these different spirits if you can, and then, you know, make mistakes. It's okay. So that's kind of my 2 cents on the subject. So lastly, I'll get into some practices that I kind of do when it comes to October. So I really like the idea of always having an ancestral altar. That's just part of, you know, what this tradition is, in my opinion. As you can see, I have a skull, not a skull, a spine light behind me that I use on my ancestral altar. And then just keeping that, making regular offerings, kind of constantly learning about your ancestors and where you come from definitely is important. On Samhain, I really like to have a dumb supper where I just eat in complete silence by myself, starting with dessert, and then we just kind of work our way backwards. But that's one thing that I really like to do personally. And then the more intimate practice is to build a root dolly, and with that you bless it with kind of images, small images of your ancestors, and you braid them into the roots, and then you basically keep that on your ancestral altar until next October, and then you would burn that one and bury the ashes into the earth. So that's kind of like a more personal thing, but I won't go too much into detail about it. But that's just one idea of something that I do. But all in all, I'm sorry that this video took so long for me to make and so long to post, but hopefully I'm glad to be back, and I will catch you all later. Thank you.